I was 18 when I found the empty bank account, the one meant for my future, drained like a forgotten well in a desert. My parents stood in our cramped kitchen, their faces pale, stammering excuses about investments and opportunities that would change our lives. By the time I realized they'd poured my college fund into a predatory multi-level marketing scheme, I was already packing my bags, vowing never to trust them again. The betrayal cut deeper than I could articulate. Growing up in a modest suburban home in Ohio, I'd watched Mom and Dad pinch pennies, always promising that my education was sacred. "You'll go to college, Sarah," Dad would say, his calloused hands ruffling my hair. "You'll be the first in our family." I believed him. I worked hard, aced my classes, and dreamed of studying engineering at Ohio State. But that dream evaporated when they fell for the slick promises of limitless wealth, an MLM that preyed on their desperation for a better life. They'd sunk $50,000, every cent of my college fund, into buying inventory, attending seminars, and recruiting friends who soon stopped answering their calls. I left home that summer, fueled by a mix of fury and determination. I couldn't afford college, so I took a job at a local diner, saving every tip until I could enroll in community college. Nights were spent studying calculus under a flickering lamp, days pouring coffee for truckers. I clawed my way through, transferring to a state university on a partial scholarship, graduating with a degree in business administration. By 28, I'd landed a director position at NextGen Solutions, a Fortune 500 tech firm in Chicago. My office overlooked Lake Michigan, a far cry from the dingy kitchen where my parents had shattered my trust. 10 years after I left, they showed up at my office. I hadn't spoken to them in years, save for stilted holiday calls. Mom's voice on the phone, trembling as she asked to meet, stirred something in me. Anger, yes, but also a flicker of pity. They were waiting in the lobby, looking older than I remembered. Dad's shoulders slumped under a faded jacket. Mom's eyes darted nervously, clutching a manila folder. They wanted jobs. At my company. The irony was almost poetic. "Sarah, please," Mom said, her voice cracking as we sat in a conference room. "We've got nothing left. The MLM, it ruined us. We're behind on the mortgage, the car's been repossessed. We need help." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of their words pressing against the scar tissue of old wounds. "You spent my future on a scam," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "And now you're here, asking me to fix your mess?" Dad's face crumpled. "We thought we were building something for you, for all of us. We were wrong. We're so sorry, Sarah. Sorry." The word hung in the air, inadequate against the years I'd spent rebuilding what they'd taken. Yet, as I looked at them, two broken people who'd once been my world, I felt a tug of something softer. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a question. Could I turn their desperation into a chance for redemption? I didn't give them jobs that day. Instead, I gave them a challenge. "Prove you've changed," I said. "Show me you can work hard, like I did. There's an entry-level opening in the mailroom. Apply like everyone else. No favors." Their eyes widened, but they nodded, clutching their resumes tighter. Over the next weeks, I watched them from a distance. Dad, once too proud to take lowly jobs, sorted packages with a quiet focus. Mom, who'd spent years chasing get-rich-quick schemes, showed up early, her hands steady as she filed paperwork. They were trying, and it stirred something in me, a mix of pride and pain. But the past wasn't erased. Every time I saw them, I remembered the empty bank account, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep. The real test came when a major project landed on my desk. A high-stakes product launch that could define my career. I needed a team I could trust, and the mailroom was short-staffed, threatening delays. Against my better judgment, I assigned Dad to the logistics team, a temporary role to help with distribution. It was a risk, but also a chance to see if he'd truly changed. He didn't disappoint. Dad worked overtime, double-checking shipments, earning quiet nods from colleagues. Mom, too, stepped up, volunteering to organize team schedules. For the first time, I saw glimpses of the parents I'd once idolized. The ones who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at my science fairs. But trust is a fragile thing, and I wasn't ready to let them back in fully. As the project deadline loomed, a crisis hit. A key shipment was delayed, threatening to derail the launch. I found Dad in the warehouse, poring over tracking logs with a focus I hadn't seen in years. "I'll fix this," he said, not as a plea but a promise. He stayed up all night, coordinating with suppliers, and by morning the shipment was back on track. I stood in my office, watching the city lights reflect off the lake, and felt a shift. They weren't just my parents anymore. They were people, flawed and human, trying to make amends. I didn't know if I could forgive them, but I could give them a chance to earn their place. Not in my heart, not yet, but in the world I'd built without them. The project launch was a success, and next-gen stock soared. My name was on everyone's lips, Sarah Bennett, the youngest director to pull off a launch of this scale. But as I stood in the boardroom, accepting praise from executives, my eyes kept drifting to the back, where Dad stood quietly, stacking coffee cups after the meeting. He didn't belong in that world of polished suits and corporate jargon. Yet there he was, working harder than I'd ever seen. Mom, too, had carved out a small place in the mailroom. She'd started organizing team lunches, bringing a warmth to the department that hadn't been there before. Colleagues began to talk about Linda and Tom, the older couple who'd become unexpectedly reliable. I overheard a coworker say, "They're like the parents of the team." The word stung, a reminder of who they'd failed to be for me. At home, I wrestled with what to do next. Part of me wanted to keep them at arm's length, their presence a constant reminder of betrayal. But another part, a quieter, more vulnerable part, wondered if they could be more than their mistakes. I invited them to my apartment for dinner, the first time we'd shared a meal in a decade. The air was thick with unspoken history as we sat around my small dining table, eating takeout pizza. "Sarah," Mom said, her fork trembling slightly, "we know we hurt you. We were selfish, chasing a dream that wasn't real. We want to make it right." I looked at them, their faces etched with regret. "Making it right isn't just about saying sorry," I said. "It's about showing up, every day, without expecting a free pass." Dad nodded. "We're trying. We'll keep trying, as long as you'll let us." That night, I lay awake, replaying their words. They were trying, but trust wasn't a switch I could flip. I decided to give them more responsibility at work, a test of their commitment. I moved them to the operations team handling data entry for the next project. It was a step up, but still far from the corporate ladder I'd climbed. If they wanted my respect, they'd have to earn it. The operations team was a pressure cooker, and I watched them closely. Mom adapted quickly, her attention to detail surprising even her supervisor. Dad struggled at first, his tech skills rusty, but he stayed late, learning spreadsheets from a junior colleague half his age. Their effort was undeniable, but I couldn't shake the fear that they'd let me down again. Then came the audit. NextGen's finance team flagged discrepancies in the operations budget, and fingers pointed to the new hires, my parents. My stomach dropped. Had I been wrong to trust them even this much? I called them into my office, my voice cold. "Explain this," I said, sliding the audit report across my desk. Dad's face paled. "Sarah, I swear, we didn't do anything wrong. I entered the data exactly as I was told." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We wouldn't steal from you. Not again." I wanted to believe them, but doubt gnawed at me. I launched an investigation, working late into the night, combing through records. The truth emerged slowly. A senior team member had misallocated funds, and my parents' inexperience had made them easy scapegoats. I cleared their names, but the incident left me shaken. Trust was a tightrope, and I was still learning to balance. As weeks turned to months, their consistency began to chip away at my defenses. Dad started mentoring younger employees, sharing stories of his own failures to inspire them. Mom organized a charity drive for the office, raising funds for a local shelter. They were building something, not just a paycheck, but a legacy of effort. I began to see them not as the parents who'd failed me, but as people fighting to redefine themselves. Yet, forgiveness remained elusive. I could give them jobs, opportunities, even a place in my life, but the ache of their betrayal lingered. One evening, as we walked along the lakefront after work, Dad stopped and looked at me. "Sarah, I know we can't undo the past, but we're here now, and we'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust." I didn't respond, but his words stayed with me. They were trying to rebuild just as I had. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward together. The Chicago winter settled in, blanketing the city in snow and forcing me to confront the growing complexity of my parents' presence in my life. At NextGen, they were no longer just mailroom workers. They'd become fixtures in the operations team, respected for their reliability. But every time I saw them in the hallways, laughing with colleagues or staying late to finish a task, I felt a tug of war between resentment and hope. One morning, I found a note on my desk from Mom, written in her careful handwriting. "Thank you for giving us a chance. We're so proud of you." I stared at it, my throat tightening. Pride was a word I hadn't associated with them in years. I tucked the note into a drawer, unsure what to do with the emotions it stirred. The company's annual gala was approaching, a high-profile event where NextGen's leadership mingled with clients and investors. I was expected to give a speech, a chance to cement my reputation as a rising star. To my surprise, the CEO suggested I invite my parents. "They're part of the team now," he said. "It'd be good for morale." I hesitated but sent them an invitation, half expecting them to decline. They showed up, dressed in modest but neat attire, looking out of place among the glittering gowns and tailored suits. Mom clung to Dad's arm, her eyes wide as she took in the chandeliers and champagne flutes. During my speech, I caught their gazes from the back of the room. Dad's proud, Mom's teary. For a moment, I wasn't the director of a Fortune 500 company. I was their little girl, the one they'd promised the world. After the gala, we sat in a quiet corner, sipping coffee. "You were amazing up there," Dad said, his voice thick. "We always knew you'd do big things. Then why didn't you protect my future?" The question slipped out, raw and unfiltered. The air grew heavy, and Mom reached for my hand. "We were fools," she said. "We thought we could give you more than a college fund, a fortune. Instead, we lost everything, including you." I pulled my hand away, not ready for her touch. "I built this life without you," I said. "But I'm letting you in now. Don't make me regret it." They nodded, and we sat in silence, the weight of our fractured bond palpable. The gala marked a turning point, but not a resolution. I began including them in more company events, small gestures to bridge the gap. They responded with gratitude, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. At work, their roles expanded. Dad took on training new hires, his patience earning him respect. Mom started a mentorship program for entry-level staff, drawing on her own journey to connect with them. Their transformation was undeniable, but I still held back, guarding my heart against another betrayal. Then came the merger. NextGen was acquiring a smaller tech firm, and the deal required all hands on deck. I assigned Mom and Dad to the data integration team, a high-stakes role that would test their skills. They thrived, working late nights alongside younger colleagues, their determination infectious. When the merger closed successfully, the team threw a celebration, and I saw Dad laugh, really laugh, for the first time in years. But the past wasn't done with us. A former MLM associate of theirs, Greg, appeared at NextGen, applying for a job. He'd been part of the Limitless Wealth scheme, one of the charismatic recruiters who'd convinced my parents to invest. Seeing him in the lobby, his smile as slick as ever, brought back the anger I'd buried. I wanted him gone, but Dad stopped me. "Let him apply," he said. "He's desperate like we were. Maybe he's changed too." I didn't trust Greg, but I trusted Dad's judgment. A small, surprising shift. I let Greg interview but kept him at arm's length. Meanwhile, I began to see my parents' growth in sharper focus. They weren't just employees. They were rebuilding their dignity, one task at a time. As spring approached, I invited them to my apartment again. This time, we cooked together, a simple meal of spaghetti and garlic bread. Laughter came easier, and for a moment we were a family again. But forgiveness? That was still a distant horizon, one I wasn't sure I'd ever reach. Spring brought new challenges at NextGen, and with them, a chance to test the fragile trust I'd begun to place in my parents. The company was launching a new AI-driven platform, and I was tasked with overseeing the rollout. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure could cost me my reputation, and success could propel me to a VP role. I needed a team I could rely on, and against my instincts, I included Mom and Dad in key support roles. They didn't let me down. Dad coordinated logistics with a precision that surprised even seasoned managers. Mom, with her knack for organization, streamlined communication between departments. Their colleagues praised their work, and I began to feel a quiet pride, not just in their effort, but in the fact that they were my parents. Yet, every step forward was shadowed by the past. I couldn't forget the years I'd spent rebuilding alone. One evening, after a long day, I found Mom waiting outside my office. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. We sat in a nearby cafe, the hum of the city around us. She pulled out a worn photo album, one I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Inside were pictures of me, graduating high school, blowing out birthday candles, riding my first bike. My throat tightened as she turned the pages. "We kept this to remind ourselves of what we lost," she said. "Not just the money, but you. We failed you, Sarah, but we're trying to be better. For you." I didn't know how to respond. The album was a bridge to a time when I trusted them implicitly, and it hurt to see it now. "I see you trying," I said finally, "but it's hard to let go of what happened." "I know," she said, tears in her eyes. "We'll wait as long as it takes." Back at work, the AI platform launch hit a snag. A critical bug threatened to delay the release, and the team was scrambling. Dad, who'd been studying coding in his spare time, suggested a workaround that saved US days of rework. His idea worked, and the launch went off without a hitch. For the first time, I felt a spark of admiration for him, not as my father but as a colleague. The success brought an unexpected opportunity. The CEO offered me a promotion to VP, but it came with a catch. I'd need to relocate to the West Coast. The idea of leaving Chicago, where I'd rebuilt my life, was daunting. More than that, it meant deciding what to do about Mom and Dad. They'd found stability at NextGen. Would I uproot them again? I invited them to dinner to discuss it. Over plates of lasagna, I laid out the situation. "If I take this job, I want you to come with me," I said. "There are roles at the new office you could fill, but it's your choice." Dad looked at Mom, then back at me. "We'll go wherever you need us," he said. "We're not letting you go again." Their words hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd seen them as the source of my pain, but now they were choosing me over their own comfort. I didn't say it out loud, but I felt the first cracks in the wall I'd built around my heart. As we prepared for the move, Greg, the former MLM associate, reappeared, this time with an apology. He admitted his role in pushing my parents into the scam and asked for a second chance. I was skeptical, but Mom and Dad vouched for him, saying he'd been mentoring at-risk youth in his spare time. Reluctantly, I gave him a probationary role, a decision that felt like a leap of faith. The move to California loomed, and with it, a chance to redefine our family. I wasn't ready to forgive, not fully, but I was ready to try something new. A life where my parents weren't just a painful memory, but a part of my present. California was a whirlwind of new beginnings. The San Francisco office of NextGen was a glass and steel beacon of innovation, and as VP, I was thrust into a world of high-stakes decisions and relentless pressure. Mom and Dad settled into their new roles, handling administrative tasks with a quiet competence that earned them respect. But the move didn't erase the past, it only brought it into sharper focus. One afternoon, I found Dad in the break room, staring out at the Bay Bridge. "This is a long way from Ohio," he said, a wistful smile on his face. "We never imagined you'd take us this far." "You didn't give me much choice," I replied, the words softer than I intended. He nodded, accepting the truth without argument. It was a small moment, but it felt like progress. The new office was a fresh start, but challenges followed us. A rival company launched a smear campaign, accusing NextGen of cutting corners on our AI platform. The allegations were baseless, but the media frenzy threatened our reputation. I needed all hands on deck, and Mom and Dad stepped up, working overtime to compile data for our defense. Their dedication was unwavering, but I still kept them at a distance, afraid to fully trust. Then came a personal blow. A reporter digging into NextGen's leadership uncovered my parents' past with the MLM scam. The story painted them as reckless opportunists, and by extension, questioned my judgment for hiring them. The article spread like wildfire, and I faced scrutiny from the board. "Why are they here, Sarah?" one director asked. "Is this personal?" I stood my ground. "They're here because they've earned it," I said. "Their work speaks for itself." But privately, I was furious. Not at them, but at the world for dragging our pain into the open. That night, I confronted them at my apartment. "Did you know this would come up?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Did you think about what it could do to me?" Mom's face crumpled. "We didn't think anyone would care about us," she said. "We're nobody. You're the one who matters." Her words disarmed me. They saw themselves as insignificant, their mistakes a footnote in my success. For the first time, I saw the depth of their shame. "You're not nobody," I said quietly. "You're my parents." The words hung between us, a tentative bridge. We spent the evening talking, really talking about the years we'd lost. They told me about the MLM's predatory tactics, the pressure to invest more, the shame of realizing they'd been conned. I told them about the nights I'd spent studying in a diner, the fear that I'd never make it. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was understanding. At work, I fought back against the smear campaign, using data Mom and Dad had compiled to prove our platform's integrity. The crisis passed, and NextGen emerged stronger. The board apologized for doubting me, and I realized I'd defended my parents not just as employees, but as family. Greg, the former MLM associate, proved his worth too. He took on extra responsibilities, earning a permanent role. When I thanked him for his work, he said, "I learned from your parents. They showed me what it means to keep going." As summer faded, I began to see a future where my parents weren't just employees, but partners in rebuilding our family. I invited them to a company retreat in Napa Valley, a chance to celebrate our successes. Watching them laugh with my colleagues, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. Forgiveness was still a work in progress, but love, cautious, hard-won love, was taking root. The Napa Valley retreat was a turning point. Under the golden California sun, surrounded by vineyards and colleagues, I saw Mom and Dad in a new light. They weren't just the parents who'd failed me. They were people who'd fallen, gotten up, and kept fighting. As we toasted to NextGen's future, I raised a glass to them, a quiet acknowledgement of their growth. The gesture wasn't lost on them. Mom's eyes glistened, and Dad squeezed her hand. Back in San Francisco, life settled into a rhythm. I was thriving as VP, navigating boardroom politics with a confidence I'd earned through years of struggle. Mom and Dad took on more responsibility, managing a small team in operations. Their colleagues no longer saw them as Sarah's parents, but as valued contributors. It was a strange pride, watching them rebuild their lives in the shadow of mine. But the past wasn't done with us. One morning, I received an email from a lawyer representing former MLM victims. They were filing a class action lawsuit against Limitless Wealth, and they wanted my parents to testify. The request hit like a punch. Testifying would mean reliving their shame in public, but it could also help others who'd been scammed. I brought the email to them, expecting resistance. Instead, Dad said, "We'll do it. We owe it to everyone we dragged into that mess." Mom nodded, her jaw set. It's time to face it. The lawsuit preparation was grueling. They spent evenings with the legal team, recounting every detail of the MLM's deception. I sat in on one session, listening as they described the seminars, the promises of wealth, the pressure to recruit. Their voices broke as they admitted their role in convincing friends to join. I saw their pain, not just for themselves, but for the community they'd hurt. The process brought us closer. One night, after a long day with the lawyers, we sat on my balcony, the city lights sprawling below. "We're not asking for forgiveness," Dad said, "but we want you to know we're trying to make things right, even if it's just a little." I reached for his hand, a gesture I hadn't made in years. "I see it," I said, "and it matters." The lawsuit gained traction, and the media picked up the story. This time, the narrative was different. My parents were cast as victims turned advocates, fighting for justice. Their courage inspired me, and I began to see them as more than their mistakes. They were flawed, yes, but they were also resilient, like me. At NextGen, their testimony had an unexpected impact. Employees who'd been skeptical of their past now approached them with respect, asking for advice on avoiding scams. Mom started a financial literacy workshop, sharing her story to educate others. Dad mentored younger staff, teaching them resilience through his own failures. Their transformation was a quiet triumph, one I hadn't expected. As the trial date approached, I faced a decision. The CEO offered me a chance to lead a new division in London, a career-defining move. It meant leaving my parents again, just as we were rebuilding. I agonized over it, weighing my ambition against the fragile bond we'd formed. I brought it up over dinner, expecting them to ask me to stay. Instead, Mom said, "Go, Sarah. You've earned this. We'll be okay." Dad nodded. "We're proud of you, no matter where you are." Their selflessness stunned me. For the first time, I saw them as parents who wanted my success, not just their own redemption. I accepted the London role, but with a promise. I'd visit often, and they'd always have a place with me. The night before I left, we sat together watching old home videos. Laughter and tears mingled as we remembered the family we'd been, and the one we were becoming. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a journey, and we were finally walking it together. London was a whirlwind of new challenges, but it couldn't pull me away from the family I was rebuilding. I flew Mom and Dad out for a visit 3 months after the move, showing them the city I now called home. We walked along the Thames, their awe at the city's history a reminder of how far we'd come. They were no longer just employees or parents who'd failed me. They were partners in a shared journey, one forged through pain and redemption. The Limitless Wealth trial was a turning point. Mom and Dad testified with raw honesty, their voices steady as they recounted their mistakes. The courtroom was packed, and I sat in the back, my heart swelling with a pride I hadn't expected. Their testimony helped secure a settlement for hundreds of victims, a small victory against the scam that had torn us apart. The media praised their courage, and I saw them not as broken dreamers, but as survivors. Back at NextGen, their roles evolved. They took on leadership positions in the operations team, training others with a humility born of experience. Mom's financial literacy workshops became a company staple, and Dad's mentorship program expanded to other offices. They weren't just rebuilding their lives, they were leaving a legacy. I visited San Francisco often, balancing my London role with our growing bond. Each trip brought us closer. We shared meals, stories, and laughter, reclaiming the years we'd lost. One evening, as we sat in their small apartment, Mom handed me a check. It was modest, a fraction of the college fund they'd lost, but it represented years of their savings. "We know it's not enough," Dad said, "but it's a start." I pushed the check back. "Keep it," I said. You've given me something better. You've shown me you've changed. The words were my first step toward forgiveness. It wasn't complete, not yet, but it was real. I saw their flaws, their regrets, and their relentless effort to be better. They'd lost my trust, but they'd earned my respect, and that was enough for now. As I prepared for a new project in London, I invited them to join me for a month. They arrived with suitcases and stories, eager to explore. We spent days in museums, nights in pubs, and mornings planning a future where we weren't defined by the past. I didn't need them to be perfect parents anymore. I needed them to be human, and they were. One night, under the glow of London's skyline, I said the words I'd held back for years. "I forgive you," I whispered, my voice breaking. Mom sobbed, and Dad pulled us both into a hug. It wasn't the end of our story, but a new beginning. Back at NextGen, I led the new division with a confidence rooted in my journey. My parents' mistakes had shaped me, but so had their redemption. They'd spent my college fund on a scam, but they'd given me something greater, a lesson in resilience, love, and the power of second chances. As they walked into my office, resumes no longer needed, I knew we'd built something stronger than money. A family, flawed but whole, ready for whatever came next.